I know I was doing an interview by phone, and he said, if there were to be a movie, who would you want cast as Andrew Ryan? And I said, Rex Harrison. And there was this pause. And we had just wrapped it up when I thought, you moron, you meant Harrison Ford.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yvonne Hunter, and I'm the head of programming here at the Appel Salon at the Toronto Public Library. This is our official season opener, and I'm delighted to have Kathy Reichs in our midst this evening. Kathy's just finished her U.S. tour, but I believe this is her first day in Canada, so it's great that she's here for the first time in the Appel Salon. And she'll be introduced by Bob Hepburn, my esteemed colleague at the Toronto Star. This event also marks the first one of our Star Talks this year. And Kathy will be interviewed by Deborah Dundas, who's the books editor at the Toronto Star. As always, it's a great pleasure working with the Toronto Star, and I am delighted at this point to introduce Bob Hepburn. Bob?
So my role here tonight is to formally introduce Deb Dundas and Kathy Reichs, and I have to confess that I have not bought the new book. But as I sat on a dock a few weeks ago, I read Bones Never Lie, so I'm way behind you guys who bought the new book. So Deborah Dundas. Here's how she describes herself on Twitter. Toronto Star books editor and book reporter, lapsed blogger, hockey mom to a hockey-mad daughter. Well, Deb is all of that and more. She's worked full-time at the Toronto Star for the past 8 years, and she's been reviewing books for the Star for more than 15 years and has been in the media for nearly 25 years. Before joining us, she worked as books editor at CTV's Canada AM, determining which authors and books to feature on the program, and she's also worked as a producer at TVO, where she interviewed or produced shows on popular writers and literary powerhouses. In addition, she's also been project coordinator for the Canada Book Day, sponsored by the Writers Development Trust, where she coordinated the National Literary Celebration with participation from all major cities across Canada. Kathy Reichs. Well, I don't think there's too many people in this room who don't know who she is, but for the 2 or 3 people, I want to say a few words. As you all know, she's a forensic anthropologist whose first thriller, Deja Dead, I'm trying to figure out when the bones started to get into the titles, catapulted her to fame when it became a New York Times bestseller and won the 1997 Ellis Award for the best first novel. The book was accepted by the first publisher that she ever submitted it to. Since then, she has written, I think, 18 other blood-soaked volumes, all about forensics and meticulously detailed autopsies. She is also co-author with her son, Brendan, of the viral young adult series, and she is one of the producers of the hit TV series Bones, which she says is loosely based on her works. She has testified at the UN Tribunal on Genocide in Rwanda, helped exhume a mass grave in Guatemala, aided in the identification of war dead from World War II, Korea, Southeast Asia, and assisted with identifying remains found at Ground Zero at the World Trade Center. Now, here are 6 other things you should know about her. And you probably know all of them. Number 1, she is one of only 82 forensic anthropologists ever certified by the American Board of Forensic Anthropology. 2, She is a professor at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. 3, she continues to work with the Laboratoire de Sciences Judiciaire for the province of Quebec. 4, among her favorite writers, Ian Rankin. I wonder if she'll be here when Ian's here. Dennis Lehane, P.D. James, and Michael Conley. 5, she never studied creative writing, saying, quote, "I didn't know anything about writing fiction and had no training in writing. I prefer taking science classes, so I just wrote the kind of book I would like to read." Number 6, despite her lack of creative writing study, all of her books have been international bestsellers. Tonight, Kathy Reichs, always entertaining, always fascinating, will tell you what she's digging into now. Please welcome Kathy Reichs and Deborah Dundas.
You are a television producer, you're a writer, you're a forensic anthropologist, you're a university professor. Now, the thing that ties all of these together, of course, is your being a forensic anthropologist. Can you tell us, take us right back to the beginning and tell us what brought you into that field?
Cops brought me in, actually, because when I trained to do bioarchaeology. I was planning on looking, and was at the time, looking at ancient skeletons from archaeological sites. The paleopathology and paleoepidemiology of 2 lower Illinois River Valley Hopewellian populations. Has anybody read that? That's my dissertation. I think my mother read it. But anyway, so that's what I was doing. But back in those days, it was before there was a knowledge of board certification and the importance of really figuring out who's a legitimate expert. When cops would find bones, they would, well, let's just take them out to the bones lady at the university.
How did your whole relationship with Canada develop?
I came to Montreal. I don't know if I should tell you what year it was. Let's just say a while back, on something called National Faculty Exchange. It's NFE. And it's a program whereby a professor at one university changes places with a professor at another university for a year. Sometimes you even swap cars and homes and things. So I had just taken, I decided an educated person should speak French. So at university at UNC Charlotte, instead of having lunch, I went and I sat in on a French 101 class. It was very humbling. Je m'appelle Kathy with my students, you know. So shortly after that, at a faculty meeting, this offer for the National Faculty Exchange came through. And there was a professor in Montreal who wanted to come to my university in Charlotte. And I thought,
that was handy.
Mais oui, I speak French. And off I went. So I went to Montreal and I taught at McGill and Concordia, the English language universities. But I started that year, the lab wanted someone who was board certified and could speak French. So I think there was a pool of 1, and I got the job. So after the end of that year, when I went back to the Carolinas, we just struck up this arrangement whereby I would go back and forth. I would commute every 6 weeks or so.
And is that the arrangement that's still there?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
That's
With the understanding that if there's, a major disaster, court testimony or something, I have to be there right away. Now, I'm not doing nearly the amount of work I was, active casework. Because I write a screenplay for the show every year, and I co-write a young adult book every year, and then I do a Tempe Brennan book every year. It's kind of a busy schedule.
And do you still act as a forensic anthropologist in North Carolina full-time as well? Or how much are you doing?
Not so much, not so much.
Okay.
What I do is when I get calls for cases, I will refer them to whoever of my colleagues is board certified in that geographic area, if it's Kansas or if it's, Ontario or whatever.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there that you also write a young adult series.
I do.
With your son. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. My son is a lawyer, and he practiced law for a grand total of 3 years.
So high achieving, it doesn't run in the family.
Both my son and my daughter went to law school. I don't know where I went wrong. They both. So he practiced a grand total of 3 years, decided he really hated being a lawyer. So he proposed that we do a young adult series. He would have proposed anything, I think, to get out of having to practice law. So we pitched it to a publisher, and the publisher said, we love that. We love the idea of kids using forensic science at a middle school, high school level to solve mysteries and cold cases. That's great. Now, throw in a vampire or a zombie. And we said, no, that's not what we want to do. So at that time, we had just adopted a dog, and the dog got sick, and the dog had parvovirus. So we're madly researching parvovirus, which is really deadly. About 50% of the dogs that get it die as a result of it. But it can only transfer from dog to dog, canine parvovirus. So we're researching this, and we thought, what if parvovirus could transfer from dogs to humans? So that's what happens in the first Virals book. The main character is Tori Brennan. Mm-hmm. She's Temperance Brennan's 14-year-old great-niece, and her three best friends are boys. So the four of them rescue a dog. They don't know the dog has been the subject of illegal parvovirus experimentation. So they catch it from the dog, and they recover, but when they recover, they notice that they're changed. The DNA of the parvovirus has entered their own DNA, so now they can hear way beyond what the human ear can hear. They can see like a wolf, they can smell emotions and fear, and so they can't tell this to anybody because they don't want to become the subjects of experimentation or observation. They're the only people in the whole world to whom this has happened. So they form a very tight, almost like a pack, and they call themselves the Virals. Okay. So the premise is they combine these special perceptive abilities with a love of science to solve cold cases. So Brendan and I write those together.
Now you were saying that you go to schools a lot when you're actually touring to promote these books with your son. Yeah. What's that experience like with younger people in science?
That's really great. We go to middle schools and high schools, and they love to see us coming because my son is this big, strapping guy, and he tells the boys, I mean, not explicitly, but he's projecting the image to the boys. It's cool to read, and it's cool to write. And I'm there, and I'm projecting to the girls, science is cool, technology is cool. So it really is a message that the schools love to have. The kids are great. It's really fun to go into that. They're so enthusiastic. We always come out saying, "Oh my God, how does somebody do this every single day? Go into a middle school, and deal with
energy you need."
Yeah, all those hormones floating around and everything, but it's fun.
And how important is it to be a role model to kids and girls especially, that science is something they can get into?
That's part of the reason also that we wanted to write a young adult series and to use Tori Brennan, a female, as to show the girls it's good. The STEM subjects are good.
Now, you also do the TV series, and you write for that as well, do you?
I do. I write with my daughter, who is also a recovering alcoholic, recovering attorney. Recovering attorney. Yeah, that was a slip.
We'll have to send her this YouTube link.
I know, yeah, we're going to edit that. No, I spent $200,000 to send them to law school, and neither one of them practices law. But yeah, she writes a very different genre. When she first decided to write a novel, I said, well, why don't you write a mystery with me? No, I don't want to do that. I want to do it on my own. And I said, well, why don't you at least kill somebody in one of your books, so we can, nope, didn't want to do it. So she's written three kind of, they're not chick-lit, they're chick-lit, but they're chick-lit that addresses fairly serious social issues. But she and I write the screenplays together.
And how does that work, the collaborative process?
Writing for television is very different from writing a novel. When I write a novel, it's your classic image of the lone author sitting at the keyboard, by myself. I write it. I don't really let anyone read it before I send it in. And I send it to my editor, and they say it's splendid, and they make a few suggestions, and I maybe make them, maybe don't. The editorial process is very, very gentle. That's not how it works in television. In television, first of all, it's collective. You go into the writer's room, and you do something called breaking the story. And the walls of the writer's room are covered with terrifyingly blank, erasable boards. And for our show, they're divided into 6 acts because that's how our show works. And all the writers come in together and you brainstorm and you hammer out. Once you've pitched your idea and that's approved, then you hammer out together your A story and your B story and your C story. And then you have to pitch that to the executive producer. Our executive producer is Hart Hansen, who's Canadian. And then he sits there like your dissertation defense, and he takes, and you're thinking, what is he writing? Then once you're approved, you're sent to outline. Then you write a very detailed outline. Then you have to pitch that, and once that's approved, you write the script. And then they change everything.
And how much say do you have in what actually goes on? Are you there on the set saying, wait a second, it's not like that, it wouldn't be real, you can't do that?
No.
Okay.
I do that at the writing stage.
Okay.
That's one of the things I do as a producer, is I give feedback to the writers. I read every script. But it's sometimes, and there are so many factors in writing for television that I don't really know. For example, here's a good example. My daughter and I wrote an episode called The Dude in the Dam. The Dude in the Dam, there was just a Twitter thing listing the 23 most disgusting episodes ever on television. We were number 1. We were so proud. It's the one where Hodgins grows the botfly in his neck. I wrote that. Yeah.
I love it.
So our opening scene was a kid coming along in an ATV, he's screaming along, he hits something, he goes airborne, he comes screaming down into a puddle of slime because leopard slugs will feed on a dead body and then they put out slimes, and then if you put water on it, it can multiply by 90% in volume. So he's coming along, boom, slime, body. That got changed to 2 kids walking in the woods, and they come across a beaver dam, and there's a body in the beaver dam.
Slime's kind of more adventurous, isn't it?
Why did that get changed? Budget. You don't have to crash an ATV. You don't have to have a stunt driver. You don't have to, have the medics and all that. What we didn't know is that there were only 3 working beavers in LA.
They have working beavers.
And they were all booked. So we're in pre-production, and we still finally, anyway, there was a cancellation or contract dispute or something. So we got a beaver, and we were told this was a bolter, that as soon as the wrangler opened the cage, anytime you have animals on set, you have to have a wrangler. So we had a beaver wrangler and a slug wrangler that day. So we were told this beaver would take off, would bolt. And it's an expensive scene to shoot. We're on location, and the water's going to come down, and then the kids, So we're all standing around, and it turned out this was a very elderly beaver. So the beaver just kind of sat there. So when the episode opens, it's a tight close-up on the beaver, and she's putting in a pretty good performance. She's moving around. We actually thought we might get a nod for best performance by a small furry mammal kind of thing. But the only reason is people are kind of prodding her and with carrots and bribing her to move. So anyway, that's an example of how things can get changed.
Now, in your latest book, there's the introduction of cyber sleuthing.
Yeah, web sleuthing. When Brendan and I were researching the 3rd book in the viral series, it's called Code, and it involves geocaching. Anybody a geocacher out there? It's an online game. I'll be really brief here. A geocacher will bury a little object, the little boxes somewhere, and then you go online and you enter the GPS coordinates, and then other people go on the geocache websites, take down the coordinates, and go out and try to find these things. If you put in your zip code, there are probably a dozen of them within a mile of your home. So I was looking at that, researching geocaching, and I came across this online pursuit called web sleuthing. And it's amateur detectives who go online and they visit websites that list unidentified human remains, and they list websites that list missing persons. And they try to match them up. They try to get unidentified remains identified. So I thought, that's interesting. So what happens in the opening scene of this is a web sleuth, an amateur web sleuth, comes to Tempe, And she plays a very disturbing audio recording for her. First of all, it sounds like it's a young woman being brutalized by two men on this tape. And she says, I know who that is, and her remains are here in your lab, unidentified, and it's this missing woman from the mountains up in the western part of North Carolina. So that kind of leads our heroine into the case.
How much of the information that you use in your books is derived from the trips that you've made abroad, to Guatemala, for example?
Well, I use real place in my books. I never write about a place I haven't been, so I research. Bones Are Forever is set largely in Yellowknife and out in Edmonton, so that, I went up there to check it out. Get that? The diamond mining, Bones Are Forever. See what I'm doing there? Grave Secrets is based on the mass grave I helped exhume down in Guatemala. I'm trying to think of some of the other. Oh, Crossbones. Crossbones is an interesting one. That is based partly in Israel, largely in Israel, and it's based on some actual skeletal remains that were found at Masada that were never reported about. So there's some real questions about, well, why are these bones, kind of hidden away? Bones to Ashes is set in Acadia, over in New Brunswick, so I spent time over there in Bouctouche. The most recent, in the fall of 2012, I went with a small group on a USO tour to Afghanistan with Sandra Brown and Clive Cussler and Mark Bowden. And we went to Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan to thank the troops for their service. And we spent a lot of time flying around in Black Hawk helicopters. And it's a little unnerving to be sitting next to Mark Bowden, who wrote Black Hawk Down. Flying through. Yeah. So we went to thank them, and the troops spent all their time thanking us for coming. So that was quite a moving experience. So I wrote about that in Bones of the Lost.
Who are you reading now? Who are your favorite writers?
Well, I like Michael Connelly. As I said, I tend to like darker books, and I like books, I read a lot of thrillers. I want to know what's going on out there, for one thing. I don't want to get 200 pages into a manuscript and find out that Ian Rankin is, writing about web sleuths or something. And I just like a style of writing. I've been accused of being kind of a minimalist writer because I don't have very long and flowery. It's pretty direct and drives my son nuts when I edit his manuscripts. I usually actually use a red pen. I destroy his art, as he calls it. But any words that are extra, I try to get them out. Gone, gone, gone. If you can use one verb, don't say he ran quickly. Say he bolted or he darted or, whatever. Find the right word. So I like writers that write in that style. But I also love British humor. For real relaxation on the beach kind, I love Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay.
Or Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. So I like that kind of stuff as well.
Now, you're saying that you don't work quite as much as you used to, which, from my point of view, it's mind-boggling what you do, so I don't know how you had anything to cut back from, how do you cut back from doing all of that? But how do you juggle it all? It must be very, very difficult.
Well, I'm on sabbatical. I've been on sabbatical for about 15 years. So it's a great job. I don't even... It's actually not sabbatical, it's leave, but I ran the chain on how long you're allowed to have sabbatical. And it takes organization, it does take discipline, and I view writing as a full-time job. Any day I'm free and I'm not at a lab or in court or on tour, I stay home and I write all day. I get at it early in the morning and I stick with it, pretty much. I might break for lunch and to work out and write. And then I'll stick with it until about 5 in the afternoon. I do not believe in writer's block. I don't allow myself, the muses aren't with me. I just write. Now, what I write might be awful, and you still have the delete key, to hit the delete key and change it, but...
Do you take a day off ever?
Occasionally. I just had my sixth. I had none. It was like a litter. No grandchildren. I just had my 6th grandchild born. So
And you were saying that there's 2 that are 5, and then
there are 2 5-year-olds, 2 3-year-olds, a 1-year-old, and then the newborn.
so in 2 years it'll be Tempe's 20th anniversary. Are we on track to be 20 for 20?
We are not, because, big spoiler here, the next book is going to be an off-series book. The book
Chatter, chatter, chatter.
The book I'm currently working on will be something completely new character, new premise, new setting.
So
But then we'll go back to Tempe.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to
so-
explain it to her why I did that.
Do you think she's going to take it personally?
I don't think so. I think she's pretty good about that. And there is a link to one of the books in the series. So it's kind of a spin-off.
Okay. So is Tempe ever going to settle down with her French beau, or it's...
I cannot answer that question.
Oh.
But the answer to that, kind of an answer to that question is in the new book.
They kind of are getting a little bit closer, not quite committing.
We'll see.
Now back to the TV series a little bit. It's Fox's longest running now. Is that
We're the
right?
longest running scripted drama in Fox history, yes.
Now, how does that feel to know that you can sort of master the TV world as well as the print world?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It feels better than being canceled. I remember in the early, you go through this process of, okay, somebody wants to produce it, and then they write a script, and then it's, will it get picked up for pilot? And then somebody wants to make the pilot, and then will the pilot get picked up and actually go to air? And then you go to air, and then will we be renewed for a second season? So it's always along the way, there gets to be a point when you relax a little bit and you realize But I also just learned last time I was out there that we are in every single foreign territory in the world.
That's astonishing.
It's kind of hard to avoid us. You turn on TNT or Global or Fox, or there we are.
No.
Or I'll be in a hotel room in Bulgaria, and I turn it on, and there's Emily Deschanel speaking Bulgarian. So,
It's funny.
Yeah.
Now they're different Tempes, the one on screen and the one in the book. Why are they so different? Is it just because of the medium, or were you kind of playing around with the...
I knew from the outset that she would be younger on television. When I had a number of proposals for both feature film and television, and none of them was quite right until I met with Hart Hansen, who's Canadian, and Barry Josephson. And we were just all on the same page. We wanted a show that was character-based. We didn't just want another police procedural. We wanted to create characters people would become invested in and really like and want to follow. We wanted, they genuinely wanted my input, which was important to me. And we wanted to put humor into the show, which I do in the books. And that is a tough balancing act, because every week, every book, we deal with violent death. So how do you put humor in there without being offensive? So it really takes a delicate touch to do that well. So, in fact, they coined a term for us when we first came on air. They called us a crimedy. So
That's kind of fun.
So I think we've just done that well. I think Emily has, part of the way the character is different is the result of writing her slightly different, giving her this, we didn't want to just have another, oh, I'm a smart cop kind of, we wanted a unique personality. So, she's not very polished, she's awkward, she's not able to emote very well, but I think if you watched, if you binged on Bones, and you watched season 1 through season 10, you'd be amazed at what Emily has done with that character and how that character has evolved.
Now, how do you think Tempe has evolved from, again, it's been 18 years and 18 books. How has she evolved in your mind from that first point 18 years ago to now?
I think she's matured a bit. I think she doesn't do some of the stupid things she did in early books, like going out and digging up bodies on her own. She still puts herself at risk. She still gets hit over the head a lot, and But it's kind of part of the formula for the genre, I think. Your character has to be, or someone the character loves has to be at risk to raise the tension in a thriller. But I think she does less of those impetuous things than she did in the earlier books.
Now, I think you've hit, or there's been something in the zeitgeist, there's been something in the air that's made these CSI type, forensic type TV shows and books so popular. Why now, do you think? What do you think people are drawn to?
Well, I think people are fascinated by the science. They started hearing about it in reporting on crime somewhere back in we had this little murder out in Hollywood back in the 90s that got a bit of TV coverage, and you heard about blood spatter pattern, and you heard about, DNA and all that.
OJ?
Yeah, it could be. That's the guy, yeah, OJ.
Yeah, okay, I remember him. Something about a glove.
Yeah, the gloves, things
One of
like
the
that.
gloves, yeah.
So I think people got a taste of it and got interested in it, and then people like myself began writing books, and it just exploded. We worked in our labs, and nobody had ever heard of us or paid attention or cared, and then all of a sudden, kaboom, we were hot and sexy, and we're not sure why it happened.
Now, again, back to Deja Dead and the connection with Quebec. That was based on a serial killer.
It was.
Was it? And that was sort of a very clear connection between that case and that first book. What was the impulse that made you move to writing it?
Well, I started that book, my first book, back in 1994, I think. And I had just made full professor at the university, so I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. And I had just finished working on this serial murder case, which had some really interesting elements concerning peculiar patterns of dismemberment of the victim. Okay. So I just took that core idea. I start with a nugget, just the central idea, and then I ask myself, well, okay, what if this, what if that, what if that, and then spin it off. And I change all the names and the dates and the places and those details for both ethical and legal reasons. But I use that central core idea.
Okay. Now, with the Quebec connection, how has that, Quebec isn't a natural place for people to set things. We don't have any
Well, it is now.
It is now.
There's 3 different series.
That's the thing. Has that offered you any freedom, any sort of creative freedom that you might not have had if you'd set it in New York, for example?
I didn't know. I thought it's a fascinating place. I thought, okay, Montreal is close enough that an American audience would find it comfortable and yet exotic enough that they would find it interesting and appealing. When I submitted my manuscript for the first, and I didn't know, I just liked it, so that's where I set the book. When I submitted it, I later learned from the woman that came to be my editor. She said, when we heard it was set outside the U.S., we were a little leery about it. And I had heard of authors who set books there and were told, we love this, we'll publish it, but you've got to move it to Buffalo or somewhere.
And for some reason you were allowed to sort of keep it.
They said once they read it, they read the manuscript, they said, absolutely, we love it. Don't change it. We love it. Keep it there. So.
This woman is coming with a question, is she? Oh, she's excited. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Will there be another Virals book?
We just did the 5th in the Viral series, which is called Terminal. Is that kind of a clue? but we left it at the end. My son dumped me, is what it is. He signed a multi-book deal for his own series. It's going to be called Nemesis. So he'll be writing those. He's just finishing up the first in that series. It's a young adult series also. But we left it such that we can revisit the Virals if we choose to do that in the future.
Hi, good evening. I'm really pleased that you're joining us today in Toronto. Thank you so much for coming. My question pertains to the television series. The last thing I saw was that Tempe and Seeley were leaving the Jeffersonian and the other members were staying. So is that the end of the series, or where do we go from here?
that was kind of what we were saying to each other in the writer's room because we didn't know if we were going to be picked up for a season 11 or not. So in writing the season finale, we didn't know if that was a season finale or a series finale. So that's what you got. But we'll be back for season 11. Yay. October 1st, we go on air.
I'm curious about your question about, I don't believe in writer's block. So I actually never knew that was something you could believe in or not believe in. I figured it just kind of happened. But do you, when you're writing, do you have it almost sort of mapped out, the full story, and you're really filling in the pieces? Or does it really just evolve and you just keep writing and writing till it then takes shape?
Well, with a screenplay, it's, as I said, it's all plotted out. You have a very detailed outline. In writing the young adult series, my son and I tend to do that because there are two people working on it. And also, that's the way his brain works. He's a lawyer, so he has to have it all logically mapped out. So we do quite a detailed outline, and then he writes his part, I write my part. With the Tempe Brennan books, I outline maybe the first 6 chapters. I have my core cast of characters.
Yeah.
I choose what the setting is going to be, if it's going to be in Hawaii or it's going to be in Jerusalem or wherever. I choose what the crime will be. I choose what kind of science I'm going to use to drive the solution. I know how it's going to end. But then it's kind of a free flow.
Good evening, Kathy.
Hi.
Welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here with us.
It's nice to have you here with us.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathy, I grew up watching Bill Nye. He was the guy that really got me interested in science and got me to find science fascinating. And right now, we're doing a lot of work here in the city around gender balance in science and getting girls interested in science. And I feel like you have a role to play in this in some way. What are 3 things that you think we can do, especially in the education community, to get girls interested in science and to get them passionate about science as well?
First of all, you need to have them read the viral series. I'm serious about that. A lot of schools are using our books as mandatory reading assignments.
Nice.
It's hard to just list 3, beyond that, of course. It's hard to list 3 things. I think it has to do with the way the school districts, the attitude towards girls and how the teachers handle girls. And I think it has to do with the whole attitude in general. Do your toy stores have pink aisles and blue aisles, and the pink aisles are dolls and the blue aisles are construction sets? You know, you have to go to the core. How do we approach gender differences in what girls should be interested in and what boys should be interested in?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Very orderly audience.
Hi.
They're so polite. Are there Canadians here? I mean,
Thank you. Hi. I'm wondering about your new book. So if you could tell us a little bit more, is there a forensic anthropology base in it as well, even though there are a whole bunch of new characters? And after all this time, what made you break the mold in terms of looking at new characters and a new story? I think it's great. I'd just be curious as to what made you sort of go down that road.
yeah, it was actually suggested to me by my publisher. And at first I thought, no, I've got a well-oiled machine. I'm going to write another Temperance Brennan book. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized I was thinking about it a lot and that it really was appealing to me. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, yeah, this is going to be fun. Let's do something new. There'll be some forensics in it, but it's going to be more, the main character's more like a private investigator. But she's a private investigator. She'll be a little younger, like late 30-ish. And she comes out of one of my earlier, a situation in one of my earlier books, so that she's really experienced some damaging upbringing in her early years. So, and they're going to be set in Charleston, South Carolina. So I don't think I'll tell you anything else.
Go ahead, yeah?
Well, back to the lab. As a scientist, where do you think the science is heading in forensics to be able to make investigations more successful, more efficient, quicker, solving crimes? Because you talk about the number of crimes that are not solved.
Right. I think the most important thing right now is getting our house in order. There was a very damning report several years ago by the National Academy of Science, I believe it was, looking at the forensic sciences and what is junk science? What's legitimate science and what's junk science? And some disciplines did not come out looking very good. So one of the recommendations of that was that we all establish standards so that we can be sure that our techniques are valid, that we have databases, that we can legitimately give opinions about probability, and that we should, every single scientific discipline should have a process of board certification, an evaluative process including a big exam, so that we know who's legitimately qualified and who's just hanging out a shingle. So I think that is the biggest development that's going on in forensics right now, is really a close self-examination of each discipline.
And what about the technology? Use of genetics, for instance?
Oh, well, DNA is, yeah, it's going to put us all out of business, probably, one day, all the rest of the disciplines. So that's certainly where your big developments are coming. But I think each area, each specialty area, if you're interested, there's a website for the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, aafs.org, I think it is. And you can look there and you can follow each section within the academy. There's pathology and odontology, which is dentistry, anthropology, engineering, entomology. There's now a brand new one on technology. What do you call that? Cyber, what do they call themselves? That look at cyber crime and that.
Well,
yeah, and each of them is evolving with their own techniques and their own technologies.
And the technology is very expensive. I suppose it goes beyond the ability of many smaller police forces to be able to buy it.
Yes, most smaller police forces feed into a larger forensics lab. Like
Right.
you have the National Forensic Science Center is it in Ottawa, I think it is. I should know that, I'm on the council. I've been there, I've been through it. I'm getting old. Or the FBI Academy in Quantico, or in the States, each state will have its state forensic lab. The problem in those labs, as you say, is funding and backlog. That's a big issue.
I think we have somebody behind
Thank
you,
you.
I think, who's
Thank
waiting
you.
to ask a question as well. Thank you very much.
Hi, I really enjoy your books, and I really like the character Andrew Ryan, and I wonder if there are some aspects of his character that are based on a real person, and if so, is he available?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not alone.
Sadly, no one I work with. I know I was doing an interview with, by phone. I think it was a radio journalist in Australia. And this was really early. And he said, if there were to be a movie, who would you want cast as Andrew Ryan? And I said, Rex Harrison. And there was this pause. And we went on with the interview. And then we had just wrapped it up when I thought, you moron, you meant Harrison Ford. Yeah. Plus the fact that Rex Harrison was dead. Yeah. So that's kind of what I visualized, a young Harrison.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to thank you for being very entertaining. I had no idea it was going to be this amazing. And I'm also glad...
No comments, remember, no comments.
I'm also glad that there's a season 11 coming up, because I don't know how much influence you have over production things that happen, but is there any possibility of getting Seeley to look at the road when he's driving? I know that they're on a platform and they're being towed, but it drives me nuts. And I sit there watching the dialogue progress going, look at the road, look at the... So, anyway.
I'll mention that.
Thank you.
No, I thought you were going to talk about Hodgins. My son is convinced. He keeps telling me the show should be called Hodgins, because always at like 42 minutes after the hour, Hodgins rushes in with the hind leg of some extinct Paleolithic spider that, cracks the case wide open.
Kathy, I'd like to thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming out tonight.